Creatures found in stories that some believe exist but have never been proven to exist, cryptids have been present in Fallout since the very beginning. One of the series' most recognizable creatures, the Deathclaw was once among their number, viewed as little more than a rumor by the various inhabitants of Southern California, before spreading throughout the wasteland and making their existence abundantly clear to all. But for many others, unraveling the mystery is more surprising, as Fallout's cryptids range from interdimensional invaders and scientific abominations to paranormal phantoms and even the spawn of Satan himself. Also characters like the Wandering Storyteller would have you believe, as the truth is often far less mystical. In today's video, we're running through the known lore of every cryptid to appear so far in the Fallout series, covering their origins, inspiration, and the impact they have had on the setting, before moving on to mention only cryptids and a series of in-game hints, dialogue, and illustrations in Fallout 76, but strongly suggest which creatures will be next to arrive, with chapters in the video's description for each section. Beginning today with the only cryptid to appear in every title so far, in one form or another: aliens. First appearing in Fallout as a special encounter, the existence of aliens was mostly alluded to in the beginning, thanks to advanced technology like the Psychic Nullifier, Biomed Gel, and Skynet, the latter an extremely powerful AI from Fallout 2, that outright stated it was created through the use of alien technology in 2050. But in Fallout 3, with the introduction of the Zetans in the Mothership Zeta DLC, aliens were officially canonized in the flesh, where their impact on Fallout's history was fully revealed, with the revelation that they had been visiting Earth for centuries. Visually very similar to the stories of little green men from our world, the Zetans are a technologically advanced species of small, green-skinned humanoid beings with disproportionately large heads. With a penchant for crash landing and abducting humans, their technology, and apparently just about anything they could get their hands on. And alongside them, two other alien species as well, as their unappetizing alien squid food and alien worm food clearly do not originate from Earth. Despite these frequent trips to the surface, aliens qualify as cryptids, thanks in no small part to the US government and the Enclave. It could also be surmised that to some extent, pre-war society was at least aware of the possibility of such creatures existing. Uncannily accurate depictions of the Zetans appeared in comics, animatronics, and creator of the pre-war religion Hubbology, Dick Hubble, was apparently in possession of an alien blaster too. Their existence was confirmed internally by the government in 2062, courtesy of the Palandine UFO report found on the Pentagon Library Terminal, further supported by recovered Zetan corpses in Enclave facilities in Appalachia. But widespread knowledge of the Zetans' existence was kept a closely guarded secret, a secret that was closest to being revealed to the general public in 2063. The crackpot conspiracy group Queer Verum discovered a secret government installation in the desert, possibly meant to be Fallout's version of Area 51, and successfully managed to steal evidence they believe proved that alien technology was being used by the government for their own nefarious ends. This smoking gun was in fact the MPLX Nova Surge, an early prototype for the plasma pistol, and inadvertently they stumbled on two closely guarded secrets: the existence of aliens and the pre-war Enclave. Hell-bent on going to the press with their findings, they were undone by a double agent, Dr. Aldwin Morley, with the group quickly hunted down, their discoveries dying with them, as although the final living member, Reed Underwood, succeeded in securing the weapon in a safe, it ended up being recovered by the Zetans anyway. Post-war things are very different though, and for the inhabitants of Appalachia and the capital wasteland, the Zetans' existence isn't much of a secret anymore. Invading the surface en masse in West Virginia, and a motley crew of abducted humans led by the Lone Wanderer, successfully commandeering a mothership, destroying another one in the process. But the Zetans aren't the only cryptids to originate from the stars, and one is arguably one of the most powerful creatures ever introduced in Fallout lore, the Flatwoods Monster. A staple of West Virginian folklore, the first sighting of the Flatwoods Monster happened on September 12, 1952, after a bright light tore across the sky before landing on the property of a local farmer, and on the crest of a hill the party that investigated claimed to have seen a tall man-like figure with a round red face shrouded in a pointed hood, accompanied by a pulsing red light. Capturing the imagination of many, its legacy would see the sighting commemorated in an annual festival, immortalized in music, documentaries, and other media. Conventional explanations rationalize the sighting as nothing more than the combination of a meteor, hazard beacon, and a very disgruntled barn owl. But Fallout's Flatwoods Monster is something else entirely. In the Fallout universe, this cryptid's origin story isn't too dissimilar. Many claim to have seen this creature pre-war, with West Virginians like Colton Pickens, proprietor of Hill Fork Hot Dogs, claiming to have been abducted.
Well, the light started turning different colors. First it was blue, and then green, and then red, and then back to blue.
All right, I've heard enough. Colton Pickens, I'm arresting you for drunken disorderly conduct and indecent exposure.
Indecent what? What are you talking about? I didn't do anything wrong.
Discovered naked and shouting on a roof, police officers didn't buy his story, but thanks to uncannily accurate depictions of this creature found on the cover of Who Goes There, we can surmise that more than one person did come face to face with this creature. The Wandering Storyteller is more than happy to talk about this creature with you.
With my own 2 eyes, I saw the creature zap him with a purple laser. And then the 2 of them vanished into the night.
But to truly get to the bottom of this mystery, you will need to defeat one yourself and peer under its metallic hood, which will actually reveal a face looking back at you. And it's a Zayton. But not just any Zayton, as tiny malformed legs are found inside this battlesuit, and facing one in daily ops reveals its true name, the Alien Inquisitor. The Enclave are also privy to this information, as we find a depiction of one in their bunker, and the enlightened cult of the Mothman were also aware of it too, as we find warnings of its true nature written in their sacred tomes. In combat, it utilizes powerful purple rays, teleports around the player at will, and will regenerate health near death. But what makes it so powerful in the lore is its controlling ability.
Its mere presence can warp the mind of all but the most iron will.
As the Alien Inquisitor can and will control almost every single entity in its vicinity to assist it against the player. Everything present at major boss fights, other cryptids, and even camp turrets and robots. The Wandering Storyteller wasn't embellishing his story about this one, which begs the question, how far could this power extend? Its ability to control scorched affected creatures, including the Queen, are particularly impressive given the fact they are already possessed by a hive mind, but could it even control entities like Liberty Prime? Do its powers come from the suit, or is this Zayton an exceptionally powerful mutant? We're unlikely to ever find out for sure, but it's safe to say that the tales about the Flatwoods Monster in Fallout only tell half the story. But sometimes cryptid legends in Fallout are just stories after all. Entering the world of Appalachia's cryptid enthusiasts means picking up the trail of unsolved mysteries. One is unsolved death and taxidermy, a quest started at Priblo's Curios. Once home to Janelle and Raymond Priblo before the war, their shop specialised in selling cryptid merchandise, peddling a variety of interesting creations, ranging from the Dogonet to the Buckler. This pair would seemingly come face to face with the real thing, the Beast of Beckley. Picking up their trail through a series of notes and holotapes, we learned that both Raymond and Janelle would meet their end hunting this creature for fellow enthusiast Calvin Van Loo, someone we'll be talking a lot more about later on. But following in their footsteps for the moment, the true nature of this beast is both surprisingly believable and a bit disappointing. The Beast of Beckley was nothing more than a large albino wolf, which along with her pups, savaged the pair, and putting all of them down completes the questline. Although Fallout 76 depicts it as a canine creature, it's described as being an incredibly tall, black, shadowy humanoid creature in cryptid stories in our world. The consistency between the two designs, however, is the 4 bright yellow eyes, which can be seen on cryptid artwork found in-game, if not on the creature itself. Another cryptid legend can be found at Priblo's Curios as well, its terrifying form depicted on the sign. A mythical animal of North American folklore, the jackalope is described as a jackrabbit sporting a pair of antelope horns. Famous for its many taxidermy mounts, many including the original, are actually made with deer antlers. Classed as gaff taxidermy and a fearsome critter type of cryptid, stories of horned rabbits can be traced as far back as 13th century Persian artwork, being popularized in America in the 1930s. In universe, we actually find the first mention of the jackalope in Fallout 2. Downloaded from a terminal on Control Station Enclave, we learned that Vice President Daniel Byrd intended on this creature becoming the new national mascot. It's ventured a second time in the same game as well. Chosen One might spot a mole rat named Jackalope if they decide to participate in Mole Rat Mambo in Reading. And in Fallout 76, aside from the Curios sign, a Jackalope plushie and wall weapon rack could be set down in the safety of your camp. As of yet though, this cryptid is yet to appear in the flesh. Moving on, it's time to discuss a pair of cryptids whose origins differ greatly from traditional source material, but are no less horrifying. The FEV mutants, the Grafton Monster, and the Snallygaster. A gigantic hairless grey mutant with disproportionately large limbs, and a foul many-eyed quadrupedal creature, both have West Tech to thank for their existence, and most shockingly of all, were once both human. Before discussing the unique biology of these two mutants, we start at the beginning of their shared origin story at the West Tech Research Center. Founded in August 2075 to house the Greenhouse Initiative, the project's original goal was to apply mutations to edible plants which would greatly increase food production, thus solving crippling food shortages throughout the country. But in February 2076, the project goals changed. The Greenhouse Initiative was replaced by the Forced Evolutionary Virus Initiative, which meant human experimentation in an attempt to isolate a viable FEV strain. with the town of Huntersville providing a perfect testing ground. That same month, what seemed like a rare strain of flu broke out, eventually escalating into a full quarantine, military intervention, and house arrest for the town's residents. A stream of unsuccessful strains produced numerous failed mutations until October 14, 2077, when a new FEV strain took to test subject AM52, the very first Snallygaster. This subject combined traits that resembled a number of different species, sporting an increased number of ocular organs, an enlarged torso, and 2 sets of arms with clawed digits. The scientists described it as a pile of quivering, genetic bio-waste. Still, it was considered a success, as it was a living, stable, functioning subject capable of sustaining itself, left in containment to incubate. The Snallygaster had other ideas though, as we learn in the special report Containment Breach, but it managed to escape on January 3rd, 2078, where it proceeded to procreate, with the mutants spreading across Appalachia. Although based on a local legend, Fallout Snallygaster is arguably the most drastically different appearance-wise. Schnellergeist, which means quick spirits, early accounts come from German settlers in the 1730s, describing it as a half-reptile, half-bird chimera, which would swoop down in the middle of the night to snatch its victims, before draining them of blood, but could be warded off by 7-pointed stars, which can still be seen painted on local barns. This cryptid legend is more accurately depicted on the artwork from the Season 12 scoreboard. Heading back to West Tech, the scientists were very pleased with the success of AM52, so they decided to tweak some genomes for the next FEV strain, and infecting test subject AM53, the first Grafton monster was born. Despite a lack of a discernible head, the subject survived its metamorphosis, far exceeding expectations but growing too large for containment on site. So, on October 23rd, 2077, a truck carrying the mutant set off on a fateful journey. Distracted by the nuclear bombs falling from the sky, the truck's driver John Bunton crashed near the town of Grafton, and the Grafton monster was free. And presumably like the Snallygaster before it, this thing can actually procreate, as these titanic powerhouses can be found throughout Appalachia post-war. Launching tar-like projectiles and slamming the ground with its fists, different variations can be found. One even being infected by strangler vines, suffering from deep seeping lesions. Unlike the Snallygaster, Fallout's Grafton monster is visually quite similar to its supposed real-world sighting. In 1964, Robert Cockrell, a reporter for the Grafton Sentinel, claimed to have seen a large humanoid creature with no visible head and slick seal-like skin stalking the forest outside of the town. His account was quickly dismissed by his editor, but news of the monster spread, leading to its growing popularity in the region. Perhaps the closest representation of a real-world cryptid in the Fallout universe though, is actually the ravenous Wendigo, a cryptid that, quite interestingly, is most often portrayed incorrectly in most other media. Originating from Native American folklore, a Wendigo was described as an everyday human being who in times of famine had resorted to cannibalism. Possessed by evil spirits to crave human flesh, they would become emaciated but possess preternatural speed and strength. No antlers in sight. In Fallout 76, Wendigos have all of those qualities, with the addition of a piercing scream capable of stunning their prey. Despite there being a Wendigo sighting recorded by cryptid enthusiast Beverly Solomon, dated 2077, and Who Goes There, yet again depicting an accurate image of the creature, there are 2 candidates for the first actual Wendigo in Appalachia. Morris Stevens, leader of the cannibalistic Gormans raider gang, was driven out after breaking their one rule, don't eat your own, due to his increasingly depraved fixation with cannibalism and a shortage of their normal food supply. Morris and his wife Edie killed a fellow gang member, the half-eaten corpse discovered by the rest of the gang. Their banishment in the cave didn't stop the hunger though.
Edie, darling Edie. Oh, how delicious you were. The sweet taste of your flesh as it passed down my throat.
Growing so ravenous that Morris ate his wife Edie, mutating into the creature we now find in the cave, devouring anything stupid enough to come inside. But Morris might not have actually been the first, as in January 2076, before the bombs had dropped, Earl Williams and a party of drunken and disgruntled townsfolk from Monongah were sealed inside the mine by supervisor Deke Sykes. Trapped inside and growing desperate at the body of James, a miner who had actually died from injuries, caused a division amongst the survivors. Several, including Williams, agreed to cannibalize the corpse, though others stated they would rather die than feed on their fellow man. And that was just the start. As more died from starvation, the more they fed. Documenting his mental collapse in a journal you can find, Williams' hunger got the best of him, and the living were next on the menu. By 2103, Earl Williams has mutated into a Wendigo Colossus, a larger and more powerful variant, with 2 additional heads, increasingly long, disproportionate limbs, towering over their smaller kin. Whether this is due to increased feeding or radiation is unclear, but all variants do share a unique quality. They can often be found amongst feral ghouls, working in tandem with them and not hostile to one another, perhaps suggesting that they are actually a subtype of ferals after all. Not all cryptids are the stuff of nightmares though, and one is actually pretty docile, with conflicting information in-game as to whether it even is a cryptid at all. The Mega Sloth. Prior to the Great War, Isaac Garahan, son of the CEO of the Garahan Mining Company in Appalachia, had a very interesting pastime. Disinterested in his family's company, Isaac preferred to spend time with his peculiar pets.
The majestic sloth. So misunderstood. So intelligent. Yes, they move cautiously, with great precision. But it is not mere laziness. Oh no, my friend. It is evolution.
Kept in cages at the Garahan estate, they made their escape following the Great War, mutated by the abundant radiation into colossal lumbering creatures. Filthy and shaggy fur covered in clusters of mushrooms, they released clouds of spores at potential attackers before hurling rocks and using their large claws to scratch. They can often be found dangling from large trees in the mire and are unique in that they ignore almost anything unless attacked first. The confusion over their status as a cryptid stems from the fact that these do not count as cryptids in the Queen of the Hunt daily quest, but do count towards various daily and event challenges. Whatever the case, these mega sloths were no doubt inspired by the prehistoric megalonyx. Fossils of this enormous ground sloth were originally discovered in Organ Cave in Greenbrier County, West Virginia, a location you can actually now visit in-game. Although if you do, keep your wits about you, as cultist worshippers of the red-eyed Mothman have since made it their gruesome abode. And these cultists aren't only interested in that cryptid either, as we discover a hunting party based in Sacramento Glade tracking the Ogua. O my shepherd, such blessings you have cast upon us, grant us your strength once more, for we have found a beast worthy of being sacrificed in your holy name. Sacrifice is a big deal in the cult of the Mothman, and the sect based in Sacramento Glade had found something very special indeed. A great creature had travelled south, and trudging through the night in pursuit, they have as of yet been unsuccessful in bringing it down. Strong and savage, snapping into any who would dare step near its mighty jaws, the cult's target is the Ogua, a cryptid in Fallout we actually know very little about, except what the cultists believe. They claim its blood is ancient, holding secrets of long ago. Unfortunately, they aren't always the most believable source for a creature's origins, but if they are correct, the Ogua could potentially be a pre-war cryptid, or perhaps more rationally, this could be a reference to the fact that the snapping turtle family have remained almost unchanged for nearly 90 million years. The Ogua, also known as the Rivesville Monster or Holt Monster, is a freshwater cryptid native to West Virginia and the Pennsylvania area. It is said to dwell in the Ohio, Allegheny, and Monongahela rivers, repeatedly 20 feet long and weighing in at 500 pounds. Its visual representations all seem to depict the creature as an enormous snapping turtle. Common snapping turtles are native to those regions, and the Ohio River is of course present on the in-game map. Facing this behemoth in combat means avoiding its snapping jaws, lunging attack, and a unique ability in which it will hide in its shell, temporarily protecting it from all damage. Although its exact origins remain a mystery in Fallout 76, it pales in comparison to the entity that the cult hoped to sacrifice it to, as the Mothman is up next.
Red eyes to witness the future. Purple to see the lies, but orange? Green? That remains to be seen.
Stalking the dark forests of Appalachia, the Mothman remains one of Fallout 76's greatest mysteries. A cryptid creature, in actuality, it is not a single entity, with numerous Mothmen having a variety of different eye colours and temperaments. Some will stalk you, others will hunt you, some are worshipped, and others impart wisdom, made all the more confusing by close ties to another one of Fallout 76's greatest mysteries. What we are left with is more questions. Why is the red-eyed Mothman considered divine? How did the wise Mothman become wise? And what is the significance of all Mothman hatchlings having orange eyes? All questions I have attempted to answer in a full-length lore video about the cryptid you can check out on the channel, but in today's video I'll try and keep this section much shorter. The Mothman of Fallout 76 is known to have existed before the Great War, featured in the tales from the West Virginia hills as a hostile red-eyed beast, preying on those in the Point Pleasant area, and despite its vicious reputation, it garnered quite the following. And it's a pretty similar origin story to the real-world sightings of this legendary cryptid. We find the Mothman statue in Point Pleasant, and multiple shrines spread throughout the town. But it is in fact the concealed church that we learn of the first actual sighting after a successful summoning and the schism of the cult who worshipped it. Brother Charles was visited by the creature on October 22nd, 2077, who warned him of impending floods the next day, and the only way to survive it would be to find higher ground. Those that took this very literally stood on the roofs of the town, and the others, including Charles, found sanctuary in Lucky Hole Mine. And on October 23rd, those that hid in the mine survived. What comes next is where the mystery deepens and the second schism of the remaining cult members. With the introduction of two beings so mysterious and unknowable, legends about them don't even exist. The Interloper and the Visitor, which I believe were actually in opposition to one another. My theory is that Fallout's Mothman were once wild creatures, perhaps originating from the stars, with their natural eye colour being orange. Hatchlings share this eye colour, but depending on outside influence from these two interdimensional entities and environmental factors, their eyes change. Green being the simplest to rationalise, is just irradiated, which leaves red versus purple. On one side we have the Interloper, the red-eyed holy Mothman, and the followers of the Winged One, the hostile cult we find throughout the region. The Interloper currently inhabits Lucky Hole Mine, where it craves blood, and the cult which worship it often unknowingly provide just that, pouring the blood of the sacrificed offerings onto its roots, and even using their own in some instances. The red-eyed Mothman act as shepherds, drawing more people to the cult to keep the offerings flowing.
He is our shepherd, guiding us through the darkness to his divine light. Where his wings flutter, I will follow, and I will not fear the darkness of night.
Within this sect, knowledge of the Interloper appears to be a rank one can actually obtain, called a Brother of the Wood. The only non-hostile member we can actually speak to, Stephen Scarberry, has this to say on the subject.
Maybe one day I will become a child of the wood. I just need to... Oh, hello. Don't mind me. Just ruminating.
But in opposition to them, we have the Visitor, the singular wise Mothman, and the cult of the Enlightened. And I think there's actually a very good reason why only one wise Mothman exists now, because the Visitor is dead. As a side note, prior to the introduction of the Visitor's body in the Deep during the Wastelanders update, you can actually find multiple wise Mothmen in Appalachia, ones you can actually kill in a random encounter. But the moment the Visitor's deceased body was added, that number reduced to 1, which can only be met in public events Mothman Equinox and Path to Enlightenment. The former, a seasonal festival held by the Enlightened so they can absorb neurotoxic dust from the wise Mothman. Interpreter Clarence has more to say about that.
Let the dust and flames and fumes fill you. Let it soak into your throats. Let it show you the truth.
And the biggest difference between these two cults is the apparent acceptance that this Mothman is not a deity, but it does have cosmic wisdom.
The wise Mothman is a single entity, though immeasurable in power with knowledge beyond the age of man. He is but mortal nonetheless. The red-eyed pretenders are wild animals.
And more than that, speaking to another member, Observer Johanna, she has quite an interesting story to tell.
My brother Yella, he tried to clone him, you know. So foolish. His wisdom was not his at birth. The little ones, they eat poor Yella.
Her brother Yella tried to clone the wise Mothman, but he was foolish, she says, as his wisdom was not at his birth, and the hatchlings ate him. Confirming then that like the hatchlings we find, something must have made this Mothman wise, and I think the most likely candidate would have been the Visitor, which, now dead, can no longer influence any existing Mothmen, pitting this single entity against a veritable army belonging to the Interloper. Of course, this is just my take, so let me know your thoughts about this one in the comments. In combat, the Mothman will utilize sonic attacks, powerful shockwaves, and will disintegrate into a pile of neurotoxic ash upon death, something they will try to avoid, often bolting into the sky, disappearing in a wisp of black smoke. But the Mothmen aren't the only cryptid to utilize this getaway technique. Another cryptid inherently linked to the real-world Mothman sightings, a man with the biggest smile in the wasteland. On your travels, you may now encounter Indrid Cold, or as he is also known, the Smiling Man. A cartoonishly wide grin and unmistakable in his black Jack Gordon outfit, he actually won't speak to you until you initiate conversation, creepily staring at you as you circle around him. Perhaps even creepier than his smile though is what he has to say, so let's take a listen.
Salutations. Do not be afraid. I do hope I have found you well. Indrid, a pleasure to make your acquaintance. What are you called? We have, haven't we? Not from you, for you. I want only happiness for you. I have been away a long time. It appears that much has changed during my absence. I have such sights to see. Perhaps you can recommend a local peculiarity. Am I? I am in no way special or spectacular. You have my thanks for your time and company. Before I forget, I must go. I do hope to see you again.
He introduces himself as Indrid Cold, and the smiling man is in fact a reference to a real cryptid sighting of the same name native to West Virginia. It's hard to believe he means well with that grin, but interesting that he mentions he's been away a while, and this original sighting actually came very close to the time that a supposed Mothman sighting took place as well. Although this conversation is fascinating, it's actually his other dialogue that's more interesting. If he interacts with him repeatedly, he will say this:
"Better the devil you know than the devil you don't. At least, not yet. I've heard the moon can be Baloo, and I trust that to be true. Ever dance with the devil under a blue moon?"
Acting as a kind of herald for another cryptid, the Blue Devil.
I really must be on my way, as must you.
Indrid will disappear in a flash of black smoke, extremely similar to the Mothman if attacked, and since he arrived he's actually been more active in Appalachia, but is immediately obvious too, as heading to the Blue Ridge Caravan pit stop and reading the Mute Proprietor Clyde's terminal, we can read about what he's been up to. In the entry Bad Juju, a strange visitor arrived at the pit stop. Grinning from ear to ear, wider than should be possible, they placed 10 caps on the counter one at a time. As this was actually the cost of a drink, Clyde obliged. Taking his beer, he sat by the fire and said nothing for hours, and the only sound Clyde heard was a faint chuckle. And not long afterwards, the pit stop came under attack from a very large bipedal cryptid, the very same Indrid was searching for. Appearing like a werewolf of legend, the Blue Devil in Fallout 76 is an aggressive powerhouse, utilising a unique howl attack, which will actually send you running for the hills, unless you've topped up on liquid courage. But what actually is this creature, and what inspired it? The Blue Devil scare of 1939 to 1940 documents a sighting in Webster County during the winter. A large bluish dog-like creature with a ghastly howl apparently was little more than a large grey wolf. In Fallout, it's clearly much more than that, and the little we can glean about its origins is thanks to a pair of in-game investigators, who may or may not be onto something. Pre-war cryptid enthusiast Calvin Van Loo, now known as Ares, and the unfortunate barman Clyde, acting as Calvin's eyes and ears on the ground. Through a series of coded messages and reports between the pair, we eventually learned that from a coded cipher, Ares hoped to find one with white on it, as he needed a hunting companion to find the mother. Reading the investigation report note, it reads, "Colour variations are limited, especially local specimen. Dark black hair is most common, appearing almost blue in certain light. None were white like you suggested." Although Clyde's investigation does not name a specific species the Blue Devil originated from, he says that they used to be bred for racing and then fighting before the Great War. This continued after the bombs dropped, but Clyde has not fully determined a reason for the Blue Devil's immense size compared to other canine-like creatures, going on to say that the size could have something to do with that place and what's nearby, although the note does not clarify what that place actually is. So not really anything final from this, but notably you can find Emmett Mountain disposal site pretty close by. Perhaps the Blue Devil is little more than a giant mutated breed of dog, which I currently believe might be a German Shepherd. My rationale being that German Shepherds were originally bred as sheep herders, racing sheep back to the pen, but are now often used for a variety of uses, including search and rescue, police work, and even warfare. Get your theories down in the comments though, as this mystery is still unsolved. Speaking of sheep and Calvin Van Loo, leads us nicely to our next cryptid. A woolly-haired cryptid reported across numerous counties in West Virginia. In our world, Sheepsquatch of Fallout 76 is one of the most fascinating cryptids we will cover in today's video, as it's a tale of falsehoods, myths, and the revelation that this thing might have actually been knocking around long before the Great War began. Calvin Van Loo, although fascinated by cryptids of every kind, was obsessed with this one above all. So when the Beige Company commissioned him to create an imposter Sheepsquatch in an ambitious attempt to seize land, he jumped at the chance. The company intended to use the increased Sheepsquatch sightings to throw property values in Lewisburg into freefall so they could buy the town, sending 2 operatives to assist Calvin, Bo Peep, and Big Bad Wolf. Calvin hoped to use it to draw out the real thing, and after initiating a mating protocol by accident, it maimed Calvin beyond recognition and escaped into the wastes. His injuries so severe, he became Ares after the ordeal. Bo Peep was slaughtered by the rogue Assaultron, and Big Bad Wolf failed in an attempt to decommission it, but did manage to lay the groundwork for us to finish the job at the Pylon ambush site. Case closed, except not quite, because the real thing was actually out there the whole time, before the war actually started. Cryptid hunter Ray Gary was left crippled after encountering one, choosing to keep the experience a secret. 2 graduate students, Michael Turner and Cindy Holloway, met their end on our date night, suspicious quill was found at the site, and the creature's presence drew the attention of Toxic Larry, a half-crazed animal-like mountain man.
Strong muscles. A stench. Like it's been around for centuries. Hiding in my lands. Feeding on my prey. Well, not anymore, it don't.
We don't find his body anywhere, so perhaps the creature ended up eating him for lunch, but if his nose is to be believed, this creature might be far older than we realised. The Wandering Storyteller, of course, has his theories, his most far-fetched theory being this one.
How could such a vile creation exist? The product of fornication, carried out far from the eyes of God. Truly an unholy creation.
But if this creature is rumoured to be the result of an unholy matrimony, then the next one must be the spawn of Satan himself, if a crackpot conspiracy theorist is to be believed at the very least. Not all cryptid stories originate from West Virginia, and actually one of the most famous of all is the Jersey Devil, which has multiple legendary backstories, which all begin in the Pine Barrens of New Jersey. The Leeds Devil was described as having bat-like wings, a horse's head, claws, and the general air of a dragon. The Lenape people who originally populated the Barrens believed in a winged deer spirit, Msing, a deer-like creature with leathery wings. And in Fallout 76, this unnamed conspiracy theorist will offer a very different explanation.
Loud tourists, low-tier entertainers, showgoers on their way home from the pier. The devil swoops down from the sky and swallows them whole.
Interrupting you on your quest to save Abby Grusso from a debilitating but very topical drug addiction. Viewed as little more than a story by most inhabitants of post-war Atlantic City, the truth was inadvertently sitting under their noses the entire time. Central to the narrative of the Atlantic City expedition, the unique designer drug the Devil's Blood is a highly addictive, incredibly rare, and prohibitively expensive narcotic for AC high rollers.
What we didn't count on was the Devil's Blood. One hit is all it took to realize we'd made a terrible mistake.
But the source, not revealed until the end of the storyline, was in fact an organic one. The Jersey Devil was real. Heading into the Pine Barrens to make a deal with the Devil in exchange for power, Antonio Russo had no choice but to kill the creature he found, as this was little more than a highly aggressive beast, describing it as having no discernible intelligence, but inadvertently discovered that its blood was both potent and addictive. With the help of the chemist Jean, the pair analysed the body before beginning production of the narcotic, dooming many a high roller and his own daughter Abby to a future of crippling addiction, as the creature Antonio slew was in fact just a juvenile. These lesser devils are smaller in stature than a Deathclaw, although no less fierce, but in order to create a potent enough antidote, full-grown adult would need to be lured out of the Barrens, and the actual Jersey Devil is a far more dangerous opponent. Speed, agility, and a surprisingly diverse range of attacks that include a kind of laser shooting from its eyes. It even has the ability to almost fly, launching itself into the air at breakneck speed. Currently, how such a creature came to be is a complete mystery, but my guess, given its similarity to the Deathclaw, itself a pre-war genetic construct designed to assist in open warfare, this creature could be a variation of that, born in a secret lab somewhere with lots of new abilities to utilise. We will have to wait and see how this cryptid is explained in universe, but finding answers to everything isn't always possible when it comes to all of Fallout's cryptids. Ghosts are canon in Fallout, with 2 confirmed paranormal beings appearing in the series so far, and a third potentially on the way, as a rational explanation for their presence, whether it be science, radiation, or the stars, cannot be found. Ghosts simply exist, although there have been multiple characters called Ghost, a ghost farm, and even ghost people. The first actual ghost appeared in Fallout 2. The ghost of Anna Winslow stalks the den, doomed to eternal suffering in this plane, unless the Chosen One recovers her locket. More recently though, it's the ghost of Lucy Grantchester that players will encounter in Fallout 4's Nuka World DLC. Haunting the Grantchester Mystery Mansion after an apparent suicide, Lucy will disappear the moment the sole survivor gets close during a creepy guided tour, with this scene in particular standing out as the ghost could be seen watching through a window on approach. But a third ghost has also been teased in Fallout 76, and with that we move on to the final section of today's video. Mentioned only cryptids who might be next to arrive. For this section we're going to be using two main pieces of source material. Season 12 of Fallout 76 introduced more than just a variety of different cryptid-themed rewards, because the scoreboard itself tells a story. Taking a closer look at the illustrations, cards and figurines, a variety of different cryptids can be seen. Traditional representations of existing creatures we can find in-game, but some completely new ones as well. And several of these served as the first clues that those cryptids would be next to appear, in the case of the Ogua, the Blue Devil, the Jersey Devil and Injured Cold. But several still remain. The second source material is having a little chat with Stephen Scarberry, the non-hostile member of the Followers of the Winged One, who we mentioned earlier. This Mothman cultist has encountered many creatures on his travels, and will describe some random encounters that actually line up nicely with these new teased cryptids. I'll be playing each relevant excerpt alongside the breakdown of each creature, and up first is the Greenbrier Ghost, a name popularly attributed to the alleged ghost of Elva's owner Hester Shue, a young woman who was murdered in 1897. Initially judged to death by natural causes, the court later declared that she'd been murdered by her husband, following testimony by the victim's mother, who claimed her daughter's spirit revealed the true cause of her death. Stephen references this.
Towards the White Springs, I could faintly see a woman in need of help. She ran unobstructed through the trees before I lost sight of her near an old cemetery.
And it's also referenced by some idle dialogue in the White Springs. Next is this illustration, the Veggie Man. Found in the top right corner of the scoreboard, Stephen describes this creature best, a description that almost perfectly matches the reputed real-life sighting.
In the thick of a forest, I heard a high-pitched jabbering close by. As I approached, some tall foliage appeared to reach out and grab a settler. Be wary of strange trees, friend.
The Veggie Man does actually have some similarities to the interloper. Both are closely associated with wood, and entering the chamber of the interloper you'll hear a low hum, although not an exact match for the jabbering associated with the Veggie Man. Another element from its sighting is it reportedly spoke telepathically with the victim. The interloper called out to the Mothman cultists telepathically, bringing many of them to Lucky Hole Mine. The Veggie Man was said to be very tall, arguably over 7 feet, with a thin, semi-human-like shape. Partially plant-based, it possessed large ears, with striking eyes that oscillated in colours. Returning to the board and heading down to the middle, we can see a sad pig-like creature. And this is the Squonk, described as a wart-covered creature ashamed of its appearance. The legends of the Squonks originated in the late 19th century. Its skin was reportedly ill-fitting, and spent most of its time weeping. A pool of tears can be seen in the illustration. In reality, it seems that this creature was likely inspired by a type of pig. Described as having tusks, it also doesn't sound too threatening, compared to some of the other creatures on the list today, with its fearsome aspect being contagious misery. Incidentally, something we have seen appear on some new camp items is the mounted radhog, and butchered boar meat. So perhaps we could see some kind of pig-like creature as a new enemy type. Outside of all of these cryptids which have been teased, Fallout has also seen a few others referenced. The Chupacabra, Spanish for goat sucker, is a legendary creature of Puerto Rican origin. In Fallout New Vegas, No Bark Noonan calls an invisible nightkin a Chupacabra, after it had killed several Brahmin around the town of Novak. The Loch Ness Monster is a legendary creature of Scottish origin, said to dwell in Loch Ness. Again in Fallout New Vegas, Jenny DeSoto, an employee at the H&H Tools company, couldn't attend a weekend event because she was operating a Loch Ness Monster puppet in a play. After raising the crashed B-29 out of the water for the boomers, Mr. New Vegas will actually air a segment referencing locals seeing a large object or creature rising from Lake Mead, dubbing it the Lake Mead Monster. And lastly for today, a small model of what looks like a Yeti, or Sasquatch, is seen in model form on the Season 12 artwork. The latter is also mentioned again on the cover of one edition of the magazine Backwoodsman. But with that, we really have reached the end of today's cryptid lore video. Cryptids have captured the imaginations of people the world over, and in Fallout it is no different. Championed in Fallout 76, we've seen many appear in the flesh, with interesting variations, origin stories, and open mysteries to mull over, but which cryptids would you like to see appear in the series next? With some very famous ones still missing, I'd love to read your thoughts on this down in the comments. If you enjoyed this particular video, please consider subscribing to help the channel grow. We have plenty more Fallout videos releasing soon, so turning on the bell icon is definitely the best way to stay up to date. With that said though, I'm off. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.